Hello malty, mixty, maxty, moochers, and thank you to Doug Beck for that malt mention introducing Ralphie Review 926 extras. It's an extras. That means that having recently reviewed a whisky or other quality spirit, I'm now providing you some extra useful information to help you improve your whisky experiences and to avoid that dreadful moment when you spend good money on a bottle of whisky or some other spirit, you open it, and having given it sufficient time, you find that you're very disappointed in it, probably because it's a poor quality version of what it used to be. That does happen. You better believe it. You are not alone. It happens to the best of us. It's real life. And it's a major shortcoming across the whisky industry that they take full advantage of shortchanging the customers by focusing their brands more and more on consumers who will blindly accept whatever they are given because they don't know any better, because they're just buying the brand. To a certain extent, I can totally understand why companies do it, because they're there primarily to make a profit, to make a living, to pay their workers, and to pay their taxes, and importantly, most importantly of all, to pay duty and excise. And oh, hang about, little pussy's arrived here. Hang about, where'd you going? Don't come in here. Here you go. It's the Bothy cat. It's Fluffy. Hello, Fluffy. I'll be up the road in a minute to give you some food. That's what it's really all about. Cats are wonderfully sharing in their selfishness. We sip a whisky. I'm currently engaged in a series of reviews of independent bottlings. And independent bottlings can be more challenging to a whisky buyer. When you go online to the shops and see all these exotic, unfamiliar bottles, either in the online retailers or auction sites, or you go into a high street specialist retailer and they have the recognised brands that you expect to see, like Macallan and Highland Park and Glenfiddich and Talisker and Lagavulin, and you've bought these bottles, you've tried them, but you're inquisitive, you want to know more about your Mostowys and Glenlochys, these yesteryear malts that occasionally pop up now and again at auction, although there's not many of them, but you will see them at auction. And then some more familiar, Caol Ila, unofficial bottlings of Caol Ila. They're not the chill filtered, caramel added 40 or 43% versions that you get as an official bottling release, although the Caol Ila tends to be relatively competent and consistent. But the independent bottlers can be at 46%, natural colour, unchill filtered. And you're now at the stage of your malt journey that you know the value of this. You understand it because your own palate has taught you. But do you buy that Caol Ila? Or do you buy that version of Highland Park called Orkney? And I thought you were going away. Listen, you wee brat. I'm trying to record a review here, and you're just getting under my feet. Go and find a mouse. Cats can be very demanding, but not as demanding as dogs. And most demanding of all are humans. So, where was I? Another wee sip of whisky. We'll take our time with this. So you see Orkney, a bottle of Orkney, or unnamed Orkney or undisclosed Orkney. And you quickly identify, either online or from a specialist retailer, that it's Highland Park. And you wonder, well, is it any good? Is it as good as the official bottling? And the chances are it's probably going to be better. And the chances are that depending on which particular brand it is, the independent bottling prices could be more reasonable in relation to what's being presented. Although not always, because you will find Ardbeg, Bowmore and Lagavulin, if they appear as independent bottlings, they are absurdly expensive, but not as expensive as Springbank, which is very rare now to see from an independent bottler, unless at an exceptionally high price for what it is. And that's just the lie of the land at the moment. That may change in the future if there's a sudden significant downturn in whisky sales, which is entirely possible at this moment in time, the way things are going. But where do we acquire the knowledge? We've done our apprenticeship with official bottlings, and we're keen to explore further. We're online looking at the videos and the traditional blogs and some Facebook pages, some Instagram conversation and some Reddit forums, and you'll gather a lot of information there from enthusiasts who are willing to share their experiences, and that's valuable. And it's certainly helpful when you start out. But also, if you have access to a local whisky club, you will find there is always the super geek, the one member of the whisky club who really takes it all very, very seriously and has a tremendous knowledge of what's just out in the market, how much it is, where you can find it, how many bottles have still got left for sale, and is it any good? These individuals can be a fantastic source of information, particularly when you buy them a dram or present them with something you've bought that they may not have tried. Because bottle swapping is a huge fashionable thing at the moment within whisky clubs. And whisky clubs don't necessarily have to meet in a bar somewhere or a restaurant. You've got virtual whisky clubs rising up now. People who are fans of certain brands and they want to kind of keep each other informed or find out if each other are actually informed about what's going on at a distillery in terms of forthcoming bottlings. And then there's whisky shows, whisky events, whisky tasting events. Now these do vary. You have quite a lot of smaller events where only official bottlers turn up and they'll have the proprietary brands on the table. But if you're fortunate and the price of the ticket is reasonable, and you will usually find this is either in a big city somewhere or in a smaller city and been organised by a local whisky club. Consider looking at reviews of the whisky event and whether it's worth attending. It might even mean an overnight stay in a hotel, which is going to raise the amount of money that you need to commit to such an adventure, because obviously you don't want to be travelling too far when you're no longer sober for sensibility reasons. But whisky festivals, tastings and events are tremendous sources of information. They're absolutely invaluable, and certainly in November at Glasgow's Whisky Festival, just before the big Christmas sales rush, you will find a lot of particularly the smaller independent bottlers turning up who are there to persuade you, the informed whisky buyer, to buy their whisky. How do they do that? Simples. They put the good stuff on the table, and usually there's a whisky shop connected, certainly as at Glasgow's Whisky Festival, a good whisky shop connected to the event where you can go and buy the whisky and have them box it up or bag it up for you to collect at the end of the show. Just promise me one thing, malt mates, and that you're not too inebriated that you take a tumble out the car park and smash your bottles. It's not cool, and everybody will notice. Nobody will say anything, but everybody will talk about it for years. You don't want that. Another source of valuable information are from the independent bottlers themselves. Email them and say, you've put out a dozen bottles for sale. I'm not quite sure which one to buy. What do you recommend? Very, very few people do this. Very few. And the independent bottler, the person you're speaking to, and it'll be probably a small team, will give you one of the good versions because they want to leave you with a good impression having made the effort to contact them. They want you to be an involuntary ambassador for their brand. Therefore, they will, out of their dozen or so bottlings they've put out there, they'll point you to 2 or 3 good ones. Because if you have a good experience, you're going to buy some more. And maybe out of a batch of independent bottlings of a dozen or so bottles, there's maybe 1 or 2 that are a bit mediocre. They're not such sparklers. It's down to the cask, usually. It's fairly competent, but it's not that great. Perhaps it's just a little anemic, a little underwhelming, or perhaps simply not enough cask engagement, just not enough time in the cask to round off and fully mature. That does happen. I've witnessed it numbers of times over the years. Also look at the Oswis, independent bottlings. It's a short list in the category of independent bottlers, won this year by Signatory, a deserved win, but not all their bottlings are great. But their prices are good for their 46% unchill filtered series. They're very good. They're industry leading prices. The only way they can do it, by the way, is by having some very good long-term purchasing deals from the distilleries to keep their costs down. Otherwise they wouldn't be making any profit, and if a business doesn't make profit, it's not a business. Some other independent bottlings will be more expensive than Signatory. Usually the reason's quite simple. It's cost more for that independent bottler to buy the cask from either the intermediary or from the distillery itself. Buying casks for your own independent bottling, proceed with caution. The price is out there. There's now distilleries looking to ask £12,000 for a cask of whisky. It's not worth it, Maltmates. I'm just telling you what you need to know here. £12,000 is a crazy, crazy price. That's nonsense. It really, really pays when you're venturing into independent bottlings just to take your time. Continue to buy official bottlings and go on word of mouth, go on advice, go and taste and try before you buy. Go to whisky festivals and see what works for you and focus on that, because if your experience of independent bottlings is not a positive and a good experience, which it should be, it's just going to turn you off, at which point you really want to start turning to other spirits. Say bourbon, rye, Canadian whisky, although very little really decent Canadian whisky is actually made available for commercial reasons. Notice the silence. And rum, which increasingly I like to spend more time with rum. I hope you've enjoyed this little preamble, this little monologue. I'm really just sharing what I know to be factually true about a journey into independent bottlings. It's what works for people. If you go out, this time, I remember in the past I bought a Cadenhead's bottling of Chairman's Reserve. The gold packaging on it. And it was a particularly obscure single malt, and I bought it because it was obscure, and it was weird. It was just a very weird whisky. I had to leave that bottle 2 years before I could actually access it after I'd opened it. One, because my palate wasn't ready for it yet, and secondly, because I was jumping ahead of myself. I was buying independent bottlings too soon, too early, just to buy them for the sake of it. I'm Ralphie. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please subscribe. Click likey. Leave a wee mention. Leave a comment. Sift through the comments. Leave you a wee heart. And I've also got a Patreon channel. Patreon.com. It's called Ralphie, R-A-L-F-Y. Pop along and subscribe there for additional, extra, and at times more edgy content. And there you have it, Maltmates. This is the journey. Whisky is what we're talking about, and I'm Ralph in the Bothy. Good night.